भाई तो भी कुछ आइडिया देते म्यूजिक के बारे में कोई आइडिया नहीं सब कुछ सुन सकते हैं
some sort of rhythm, some sort of beat and some sort of hook.
It's as essential as food and oxygen.
For me it's almost like it's like the music goes through you and becomes a video.
Something that you can feel but you can't see.
One of the many ways of expression.
I can be sitting here in my pajamas for 24 hours and have the best day of my life.
I sing a song and everybody is.
My name is Stefan.
Oh man.
I'm Avinash, that's Gaurav. We're part of Blot, Basic Love of Things, which is a audiovisual collective based out of New Delhi.
I met Avi at his studio through a common friend of ours, who was also one of the founders of our club I, Akshar, and so we met basically through a common friend, and all three of us started Blot, and we played a couple of gigs, and we got to know each other on the job. So yeah, and now it's been 4 years. We have one member less, and in terms of one founding member less. But yeah. But otherwise, yeah, that's how we started. We just wanted to do music and video together and have a good time and see how the audio and the video would interact as a basic starting step.
The reason I came to India, I guess maybe I was looking for some adventure, and India seemed to be quite a virgin territory in terms of modern music.
Space actually started in Calcutta when me and Ritika got together, and we decided to make music very simply. There was this need of doing something of our own as women, as friends, as people who followed music together, and somehow we felt there was a need of some freshness.
I am basically from Delhi. I've lived in Delhi all my life pretty much. I basically produce music for a lot of different kinds of people and musicians and requirements. I've been a musician now for almost 15 years, I guess, and it's been like a long journey in terms of like learning and experience and the kind of people that I've worked with and the various purposes that I've done music for as well. It's essentially when I moved to Bombay because I had a few friends who wanted to make a break into Bollywood without knowing much about the industry at all. So that kind of, the chance that we took, it kind of paid off because the first few films that we did were very low budget independent films, but they kind of got pretty popular as for the music, and from there on I got a chance to meet more professional musicians and people who are already pretty much established and professional in the industry. I've done like a fair amount of work, commercial work in Bombay, which gave me the confidence to eventually become a music producer, which is what I am now.
My name is Stefan K, otherwise known as Flexi K. Well, I've been playing music in several bands for a few decades in Delhi. The idea occurred to me at some point to put together a ska band, simply because no such music existed in this country as far as I knew. So the challenge really that I was faced with was is finding people who could actually play this kind of music. Which, so probably there's only about 5 people who could, and they're all in the band.
I have a solo project by the name of D.O.P Inquiry, where I make all of my own electronic music and I play it live.
We've been promoting our music online. We've also maintained like some sort of independent status by not becoming signed, or let's say not becoming a part of a record label, because once you do that you cannot send your music out for free. The internet allows you to connect with a lot of people that you wouldn't physically be able to connect, which is A, also in your city, B, across the world. That process seems to work a lot because it helps us get across to people that we are not essentially in touch with. The second most important thing to popularize our music has been to continuously play shows. We've gone and played like probably close to about 100 shows in the last 3 years, and we've gone to a few places outside the country. We've gone to a lot of places inside the country, playing all sorts of venues. We believe that that's like a very sure shot and a very strong way of getting the music out, so that people have like a recall value, and then you can take them online and where they can consume your music further.
So things are like definitely moving really fast. Like, you know, people who've been here around for longer, you know, like people like friends and people who I look up to, like, you know, the medieval pundits and Jalebi Cartel, they all tell us like that there were days when they would actually have to pay a venue like X amount to let them play, you know, before or after the Bollywood DJ, and it's like crazy to think of like how far like we've actually come from there.
Music is probably one of the most strongest yet the most invisible emotions, or it's like a creator of emotions, and it's completely made up by human beings, right? Sounds make people feel certain things. They can make you feel sad, happy, energetic, low, a lot of things there. And the most strange thing about it is that you can't see it, and sound doesn't talk to you, you don't talk to sound, but still you make a connection in your mind when you hear a sound or when you hear a piece of music.
It can be a way of non-violence in people if music gets more importance in the world.
I mean, for a VJ especially, you typically, in the way that things start, you are kind of a slave to the music, or you're not that you're supposed to be, but that's what the function is, and you're like technically a slave to the music. And so for me that's really interesting. For me it's almost like it's like the music goes through you and becomes the video, and you're kind of that in between part. So for me it's a different experience, and most of my time with music is spent listening to like the rhythms in it and listening to it carefully and always trying to interpret what it means visually and trying to like work with that. So it's my starting point for everything, and of late, like, and while Blot right now, for example, does many things, like, you know, we do video, we do spaces, we do fashion, we do art, and we do food and all these other things. Music is still the one that's the starting point, right? It's just, it's all these things are somehow visualizing music in some ways. So for me, music is just, yeah, like the birth of everything.
I just sit down and like exercise my mind and come up with something, and when something comes out, like, there's absolutely no feeling like it in the world. Like, I can be sitting here in my pajamas for 24 hours and have the best day of my life.
Certainly the music scene is diversified. Whereas before it was all kind of generic, kind of like denim rock, kind of Iron Maiden songs played backwards, masquerading as OCs, original compositions. People are a bit tired of that now, and I think there was for a long time there had been a huge untapped audience, and the reason I think many people didn't go out to see live acts simply was because no one was playing the kind of music they wanted to listen to. Now, you know, you have all these genres that weren't really around. You couldn't go out and see a reggae ska band or a kind of sea shanty, cabaret, gypsy jazz band.
Things have been changing a lot in India. I've been here for 2 years, and I can say with certainty that things are not the way they were when I just gotten here. There's like maybe double the number of venues in Delhi. There's 4 or 5 new major music festivals that didn't exist back then. There must be at least 10 or 20 new artists that have emerged who are like killing it all over the country right now. Now, like, if you look at what's happening in the States, you know, or in the UK, it's really tempting to go like, oh man, like, you know, this sucks, like, we're really unlucky and shit, and like I want to get out of here, like, this is not fair. But the point is, like, you know, like, each country sort of has its own story. Like, you know, nobody compares, like, you know, why don't we have, like, you know, like this massive superhighway connecting all our cities without any like traffic lights in between. It's just like a different situation. Like, you know, like, just to expand that metaphor, like, India is now building its set of highways, and, you know, maybe in 20 years we will have it, right? And I think that the point is that it takes something to build it. Like, we cannot possibly have the kind of scale and size that they have, because, like, face it, they started 50 years before us. You know, in the 60s, when we were barely recovering from our independence, they were holding Woodstock.
You know, I've always felt in India there are these phases. You know? There's this IT phase, there's this call center phase. Perhaps it's the music phase which is going on right now.
It's easier to jump in your own lifetime between like types of music. You know, a lot of people, like, even for me, before Plot started, I wasn't so much into electronic music, and also to other forms of music, and it was easy to make that jump. Plot started and we made that jump, and now I'm completely into it. So I think in general, I think that's the same for even people and audiences who listen to music now. There's so much choice that people can switch and have very different personalities of music inside them, which is good, because then many people, I mean, you don't have die hard of anything anymore, except maybe some metal in IIT Kanpur.
If anything could ever be this good, oh yeah. That's the only thing I'd ever ask of you. You gotta promise not to stop when I say well. Thank you guys, thank you for coming out tonight.
Though it's a bit still difficult, because sometimes venues just expect musicians to come, play for free, be happy with the food and drinks they're getting, and, you know, not really think of budgets. But there are other venues coming up which are waking up to that and understanding that musicians should do their own job.
All I need
a little time to get behind the sun and cast my way. All I need is a piece of this mind, and I celebrate.
Needless to say, a musician's job has really increased a lot more than playing music, and it's about PRing, it's about you know, being technologically savvy, and many more things. You were promoting the gigs yourself, expecting to get crowd also for a venue, also entertaining, you know. So it's a heavy job.
It's opened up to a lot of different sounds. There's a lot of dubstep, there's a lot of drum and bass, there's a lot of independent music. There's a lot of styles within electronica that are now distinct from each other in India, and there are different people that go to different kinds of gigs. So that way it's got more of an identity that it ever has had in India, and it'll only keep getting better as more and more people take the initiative and start listening to underground or electronic music at home as like a staple. Then they'll go out to gigs and stuff in search of something new, because for music that's not commercially viable and that's not played on TV, the best way to go and listen to it globally is go to a gig and discover some new sounds. So it's getting closer to, it's still very far away, but it's closer to that, and closer than it's ever been.
The musicality of Indians in general is because of Indian classical music. Like, you know, like all the music that Indians have ever heard, like in terms of Bollywood or popular or anything that is from India, is all derived from Indian classical music. So, like the musicalities of Indians in general is because of classical music. Like, I would say that things are changing in the sense that maybe, like, you know, 20-25 years ago, you know, when our parents were our age, if you were a musician, it would mostly mean that, you know, you'd probably learn Indian classical, because there were good careers in the music, there still are.
Even though you have like jazz festival, for example, which have started, I don't think it pushes classical music to the backseat. I think now you have a greater offer, but I don't think Indian classical music is having less visibility now.
There's an audience for classical music. There always has been. The two types of music will coexist. It's not a case of the independent music is taking away the attention from classical music fans. Not at all. I think many people who like so-called indie music would appreciate other forms of music.
Classical music is very, very beautiful, and there's lots of other things. There's a culture attached to it, but that culture is a consequence of classical music being around for so long. Yeah. Electronic music, on the other hand, is new, and there is a big culture associated with it already, and it's had enough time to sort of garner a older lot of people, because we're all in the first generation of electronic music. So yeah, that's my thought.
Second generation. I mean, I agree with them pretty much. I mean, I have some form of classical thing, because my mom's a dancer, so I've been like, there's a direct point of reference of those two things. And we also have projects where we work with her and try to bring electronic music and classical music together. But yeah, I mean, but they're so different also at the same time. And I think it'll take many more centuries for electronic music to reach that, have that kind of history and have that kind of like depth in a certain sense. But a lot of the electronic musicians who also actually do well in any case are musicians and are classically trained in the Western style. So there is obviously some link, and it's not that electronic music is one, it's still music, it's still based around the same things, it's still the same.
They all have the same principles,
yeah.
Skeleton level, so it's still like bars, and you're working with harmonics and keys and notes. It's all the same, it's just a modern day adaptation not classical music but of music.
Mahiyana aaya mera, mahiyana aaya, mahiyana aaya mera, mahiyana aaya, ranjana aaya mera, mahiyana aaya, mahiyana aaya mera, ranjana aaya, ਅੱਖਾਂ ਦਾ ਨੂਰ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ, ਅੱਖਾਂ ਦਾ ਨੂਰ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ, ਅੱਖੀਆਂ 'ਚ ਹੰਝੂਰ ਉੜਦੇ.
There are probably a lot of people who listen to both, and some who listen to one but not the other. But that's the good thing I think is about music, that there's no real like competition. Like, there's no limit to the amount of songs a person can listen to in a day, aside from the time constraint. But you get the idea. So I think that both can exist perfectly well. And like as a contemporary musician, I have a lot of respect for Indian classical musicians and for classical musicians in general, because they're bringing like a really old tradition forward, and it's really important to our identity. So.
Classical music is a very, very rich heritage, very, very rich tradition, and it's coming from absolutely the roots. So it's difficult for that to go. Sometimes branches might just break off and die, but it's difficult for a root to go. And in India, I think Indian classical has a lot of weight. I feel it's kind of good if other genres are coming in, because it's giving us different spaces. And I sing Indian classical, and I also express elements of that in our music or anywhere I perform. So for me, it's rather a challenge that I can also keep the Indian classical music alive in these genres, but not necessarily in a kind of sticking to rules, but rather making it more improvising or vocalizing, like harping on that aspect of Indian classical where we have to push ourselves to improvise at the moment, and a lot of expression actually comes out through Indian classical. So I totally advocate this music because it gives me peace, and for all you know, in 10 years I could be doing proper Indian classical concerts, so definitely I don't think it's dying. It's really difficult actually for something like Indian classical to fade away like that, so I won't let it happen.
As far as the spread of technology is concerned, there's a few different sides to it. Like, firstly, it has made the whole process more democratic. Now, you don't have to be connected or wealthy in order to get access to like equipment to make basic music. So what I think that does is, in a sense, it's good because it like actually increases the competition for every single person who owns a laptop can now make music. So in that sense, it really just comes down to a person's musicality. So like I firmly believe that you can't just make music with technology. Like there has to be a musician somewhere in there, and if not a musician, maybe a sound artist. At least personally for me, like I only make music to express something, and that's really difficult to explain sometimes. Like what I'm trying to express, it's an expression. So in that sense, technology can be both very, very helpful in realizing that expression. It can make it possible, but it can also hinder you. Like everyone has heard of the word presets in the world of producers, and there's like a million ways to make music rather than actually creating your original sounds. Like it's really easy to like throw a song together in minutes in software like GarageBand and Fruity Loops. So there's no doubt about it. There's a lot more music coming out now, and some of it is really genius, and some of it is like not worth listening to even once, and all of it is like got the same platform to fight for attention. It's the internet.
People use technology, given the same computer, given the same camera, given the various kinds of gadgets that we use mostly, but they use it in like a unique, peculiar way. I would say that a true artist uses digital technology or technology as such for what he or she wants to achieve, rather than saying that this is their forte or this is their strength. As far as digital skills go, for using them, like I said, in a commercial aspect, one shouldn't look for artistic things in them. And I don't really think like it's the fact that a lot of people say that anybody with a computer can make music, or anybody with a computer can shoot films or edit them. It's eventually what the thing looks like or sounds like or how many people it appeals to is what matters.
Often that discussion is there nowadays, but actually it's a question that doesn't really need to be answered, at some level, because, people at any point in time, they work with the tools they have, right? I mean, if there were crayons when we were children and we made drawings with them, right now we have, a digital pen, and we have these amazing things that can expand our personality further. So it doesn't matter if you make, if the tools, for us, I mean, for me also, and I know for Gaurav also, I think what also Gaurav was trying to say is that in the world that we're in right now, the tools become a way to express yourself, through which you express yourself. The more time you spend with it, the more you go deeper, then those tools start to free you, and they let you be yourself. And once that happens, then from that, what you call art, I think, or music, or original music, or good authentic music or art, just comes from that, right? So the tools are just kind of they open some doors for you.
If musicians were the waves of an ocean, and it had to hit the sand to make those waves, right? The sand would be actually the audience. If there's no sand, there's no waves.
Without an audience, there's no reflection or there's no reaction. I would look at it more or less in like a positive way, because when you're facing an audience, they expect something from you, which is they are there to absorb what you're there to give them. If you are into performing, you have to have an audience. Good, bad, happy, enthusiastic, but it'll always be a challenge.
In India especially, it's like they tend to be interactive, they tend to be very responsive. So in Europe it's not like that. It's like, you have performances throughout, and then in the end people are going to be clapping, and so for me, when I perform there, it's a bit like, alright, am I singing? Okay. But in Delhi, I think somehow, like for example, Calcutta also, the audience is extremely there. It's almost too much there also, like you almost feel like, are we fine, because they are looking at us and audaciously experimenting, these girls, sometimes it used to become like that, but we still did it nevertheless, but somehow we got very motivated by the audience in Delhi. So I mean, definitely it helps. We have gone on for jam sessions after a concert is over, like sometimes concert goes on for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, but the jam session went on for 2 or 3 hours after, just because the audience is there and they're still sitting, they're still listening. And that's beautiful. I think that's very supportive, and that should be there always.
10 years ago, it was unheard of that you could sit at home and record music or even produce music, which can become like a worldwide hit. But now that kind of thing is possible and is done at like a daily basis.
Things are pretty good right now. It's only an indicator that the future might be very interesting.
They can do it, why can't we?
I think they'll be really killing this.
Sometimes it just sounds empty if there's no soul into it.
People just get to make their own method.
You have to have something meaningful to say before that technology can actually take you.
Even someone who has no idea about, how to play an instrument can now actually make music.
So vibe is like probably spreading a bit more from the underground coming into the overground.
We're only at the beginning.